great lecture fan. Everybody pumped? Woo! Woo! I'm pumped. Now, another reminder, everyone, if you can't tune in to everything on the stream, remember, I'm trying to remember to record each segment with each guest, and hopefully then at some point before Tuesday, I'll be able to get on and upload each of those individual videos. And those videos will hopefully be on Rumble, on YouTube, and platforms like that. So I am a machine, aren't I? Oh. Don't tell Rational he has to go to bed. Poor guy. This In Pursuit of Knowledge guy. What's up, Pursuit? I'm not. Aftershock's running the show, so if he chooses to ban you because of your, that's not on me. But I don't remember you, but whatever.
Rob, what's up?
There you go, man. So, I thought we would. It's up to you. I'm doing this 24-hour show. I would thoroughly enjoy just doing this show the same way we had been, with you sort of running it, and I think that'd be great.
Totally, yeah. So I was thinking, we wanted to try to do 10 shows. We started this 10 months before Election Day talking. We were going to try to talk once a month up until Election Day. We didn't obviously get that many in, but we'll do, this will be like our 5th one, and it'll be like 5 shows over the course of 10 months leading up to the midterm elections. I think this will be a really good conclusion, and then maybe we could even do a post-election one, but lots of people enjoyed it. I've had lots of people in my chat constantly asking, hey, when are you going to do another show with Rob?
Yeah, I know. I can't wait. So I'm going to go ahead and record this, and you could run it. We'll get going. Thank you again so much for being here. I can't say enough. Thank you.
No, I want to say I think it's so cool that you're doing this. I fully support you on doing this. I think it's really critically important that, here as interest and attention starts to peak on these elections that, we're doing everything we can. I know you're doing everything you can. I'm doing everything I can. I think this is hugely important, and I got to give a lot of props to you for doing this. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. I got to say, you kind of spearheaded us doing the midterm coverage. I know you're doing great with the radio show. You're doing great with your Twitch show. And I was telling my audience here, people were like, oh, Rob's been doing the Twitch thing for a while. The original, the OG Twitch conservative streamer is Lecture Fan, paving the way for the rest of us that get heaps of garbage shoveled on us by the mob of lefties over and over again. So a trailblazer in addition to just doing great work on your stream. So it's always a pleasure to be doing a show with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's going to be cool to be doing this on your 24-hour stream and doing the final Rob Noerr Lecture Fan State of the 2022 midterm election. It's going to be like double billing, which is unethical if you can't do that as a lawyer. So like, for example, let's say I was flying somewhere, for one client, because I had to go to a meeting for one client. So I'm flying to a location for a client and I'm billing them for the time on the flight. And then on the flight, I'm working on a different case, like, on the airplane. You can't double bill for that. That's strictly unethical as a lawyer.
That's all right. As long as Democrats are running it, it'll be all right for you. Ethics don't matter to them anyways. No, it is great. Double the bang for your buck, How lucky is our audience? Danabo was in my chat, said the 2 sexiest men in the online political sphere.
Amen.
When he's right, he's right. What can you say?
Yeah, no, amen. No, well, I will say this, Rob. I firmly believe you are destined for greatness. I may have been on Twitch in 2014, 2015, trying to do politics on Twitch, but conservative political commentary has been around for a long time, and I know you've been into the debate space and this stuff for a very, very long time as well. And I want to just say right now, I see you someday at the top of the political commentary game. And I think your success is good for me and my success is good for you. And I see both of us just making a huge difference, beneficial to America over the next 20, 25 years.
Thank you. That's very humbling. I really appreciate it, and I feel the same way about you. And it is one thing, even if you're watching and you're one of our left-wing friends that are watching, like, and you're on this sphere, the success of people, even those that you disagree with, that are willing to interact with others on this sphere, is good for everyone. And I'm more concerned about the conservative because I care about the direction of this country. So the success of conservative streamers, it's not a zero-sum game. And one of the things I've talked to you about is you also working with a radio show. Both of us are interested in merging those older traditional styles of conservative media like radio with the newer style. And I think that both of us are right that that's something that we're going to see as a wave in the future. And we're both pushing Republican people in the Republican Party and politicians that they need to understand these new platforms. So I'm happy to be here sort of on the ground floor. And I agree with you. I think that both of us are going to kind of symbiotically increase our reach, and hopefully other talented people come along and are able to share in that as well.
Right on. Well, so I'll remind people 10 months ago when we sort of first started having conversations about the midterms, I think even 10 months ago, we were both basically saying, like, we feel really good about Republican chances. We started doing it before we even had some of these primaries. Obviously, we didn't get certain primary victories in some of these races that we want. We're still supporting even if they weren't our favorite candidate in the primary. They're obviously better than whoever the Democrats had put up. For the last 10 months, I've been pretty confident in the GOP chances, and I think you have too. There was the mainstream narrative sort of. There was maybe a couple of months there where Biden's poll numbers started to improve a little bit, Democrats polls improved a little bit, and then now as you get closer to the election, even the mainstream narrative is basically like Republicans are going to do anything. So I'd just be kind of curious, sort of, where have you been sort of over time in terms of what you think is going to happen in the midterms?
So I agree. I think that both of us have been pretty consistent. I mean, we've given specific predictions on how many House seats we think. We both thought Republicans would win the House by considerable margins. Senate, I think I said 52, 53 seats. Actually, maybe undersold that. It might actually be bigger than that. I think one of the reasons that we were able to sort of maintain a consistent prediction is because we're looking at more of a big picture than the issue of the day type thing. And so to me, the indicators are quite clear when you look at things like the economy going in the direction it is, the border going in the position it is, crime, and sort of, the other big issues I'm talking about are sort of the lockdowns that we had and sort of the harming of children through lockdowns, other sort of indoctrination. These things are going to get blamed on the current administration, rightfully so. But even if it wasn't rightfully so, the party in power is going to get the blame. So it's looked like this country's been struggling by those metrics for a long, long time. And so we were able to say that those indicators seem pretty clear then that over maybe not each individual race you could predict, but over a broad metric that you're going to see Republican and conservative victories. So yeah, I think we've been pretty consistent even through the dark times. I think maybe I had not doubt, I still predicted Republicans would win, but when Roe v. Wade, which is a great thing that it was overturned, but when it seemed like, well, that was going to be the big issue, that maybe that would have dampened Republican chances in some areas, not because they're wrong on the issue, but because they allow the Democrats to control the narrative. If the average person knew how extreme the Democrats were on abortion, they would reject that totally, but they're very good at controlling that narrative. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to see the economy way out, the harming of children way out. And so I think we've been pretty consistent, and I'm still predicting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because we're looking at more than just the poll numbers, because if you just look at the poll numbers, you have to be able to think about, okay, what's going on in society? What are the American people feeling? What's going on with the economy? What's going on with sort of deeper issues? And I think a lot of the mainstream narrative is just driven by poll numbers. And then it's so silly how, this happens every election. Here, as we get closer, it starts working about 3 weeks before the election. All of a sudden, the polls really close. They really get tightened. They tighten up. And it's like, it happens every time. And it's like, really, does the race really tighten in the last 3 weeks before an election every single time? Or is it the pollsters trying to do a better job so that they can say, hey, we got to, hey, and then for 6 months before the election, they get to run these narratives about how the American people support the Democrats Democrats, and the polls are showing the Democrats, which of course helps the Democrats because people naturally like to support a winner, But now, and then 3 weeks before the election, and I know you commented on my tweet about this, and Rush Limbaugh used to talk about this, a lot too. So, but it's just interesting. But I think one of the reasons me and you were able to like be consistent throughout this time and kind of and is because we're looking at more than just the polls. We're looking at what's going on in society.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, your tweet was spot on. You should follow Lecture Fan. In addition to his Twitch channel, you should follow him on Twitter. And I think he put it more concisely than anyone that was like, here we go again, right? Like sort of the idea of, oh, the pollsters, Democrats. And then it always tightens towards the end. And then they'll be able to say afterwards, well, continue to trust us. We were within the margin of error at the end. Right. Famously, if you remember, wasn't DeSantis down by like 10 points or something a month out of the election? They had that. And then they shrink it. And then it's like, see, we were right all along. And there is utility in that. Rich Barris, who's a pollster you can follow on Twitter, he talks about this. He's like, look, it's one thing to get the polls wrong. It's another thing to continually ignore why these pollsters are getting it wrong. They're not trying to improve. And it's just like the media. They're not really pollsters. They're propagandists. Now, there is truth in some of the broader polls in the direction they're moving, but you see simple tricks like oversampling Democrats or the way they're wording questions and things like that. And like you said, people like a winner. So this is designed to influence and then cover themselves at the end by saying, oh, we weren't wrong, we weren't wrong. So, yeah. I mean, one of them was the generic congressional ballot. That's the one I tweeted out, and we had talked about the generic congressional ballot. Like whenever we did our shows over the last 10 months, I always tried to have like some data about where the Real Clear Politics average was on generic congressional ballot, Biden approval. But three weeks before the election on the generic congressional ballot, all of a sudden it's been like pretty close. And then 3 weeks before the election, all of a sudden the Republicans are winning by 3 points in the generic congressional ballot. This huge spike, just a sudden spike, And then another one that really changed is, and I'm sure you've seen the stories about this, is white suburban women, And that's this, really, how the media loves to say like certain groups of voters are like more important than other groups of voters. And they love to say that like white suburban women are way more important voters than sort of rural white males, for example. It's all about the white suburban women. It's just so weird how they like they divide people up by race and then pit them against each other and categorize them by race. It's just so gross. But you look at white suburban women poll numbers in August, and the GOP was losing them by like 20 points or something, and now they're like leading by 15 points. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, yeah, because in August, in the summer, that's when Roe got overturned, and it was really a lot of focus on abortion. But now, those women are distracted by shiny objects, and the Republicans have been good with their messaging on school issues and hurting kids and stuff like that. So that's what it's just all this like sort of weird narrative thing. And it's like, number one, white suburban women is just one category of voters. They're not the end all be all. But you, I don't know if you've kind of seen that huge shift in the polling in white suburban women. And I think I don't know. I don't necessarily think there's a huge sort of twist. I don't think that, like, the other thing that the Democrats and the media, they categorize people by their race, and then they say that they only care about one issue. Latinos, they only care about giving amnesty to illegal aliens, according to Democrats. White suburban women, they only care about abortion. Rural white males, they only care about, like promoting Nazism or whatever the hell. Like they categorize people by race and then tell you what they're supposed to be. They're a single issue voter, which is just not true. I never thought that white suburban women, quote unquote, were going to vote strictly on abortion. We want abortion until 9 months. And then, dude, every Democrat throughout this race, when they got their talking points, and they were told, hey, if you guys are asked, do you support any restrictions on abortion? All you have to say is, I believe abortion is health care and it should be a choice between a woman and her doctor. And it's like, that's just such a BS talking point. But the upshot of that is, the takeaway is, you don't support restrictions on abortion. And so you've got these Democrats running, literally saying no restrictions on abortion, which, you're right, is an extreme position that the American people don't support. But I just don't think white suburban women, I never thought abortion was going to be this huge issue. I think people are more concerned about inflation, the economy, crime, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if you have any comments on any of that, but no, I can, right. It's the economy, stupid. Like, there's a lot lot of truth in that. And like, this was something when I was in policy debate in college, we talked about all the time. You could be the biggest hippie socialist in the world, but at the end of the day, the reason that you are free to be able to have the positions you have is because you're economically protected enough that you're not struggling for a place to live. You're not struggling for food. And if those things start to impact you, that's going to be the most important things in your life, regardless if you're conservative, if you're liberal, etc. And so it's always a smart move to focus on the economy, particularly when the economy is struggling to the point it is. And what's the Biden administration message on the economy? Strongest economy ever. If you're failing, it must be your fault. I mean, there are millions of Democrats that are looking to the guy that they voted for, like, okay, I'm struggling. What help is coming? And the guy's telling you, there's no help coming.
Buy an electric car.
Yeah, we don't even think you're struggling. It must be your fault if you're struggling, because this economy, and so, I find that very interesting that, we say that there are these other issues. The economy is always an issue. If people are struggling, the other issues seem to, below that. Now, when it comes to abortion specifically, one of the things that people forget is that, yeah, you're right, that maybe the majority of vocal pro-choice people are women. But guess what? The majority of vocal pro-life people, also women. Right. And like, we tend to forget that there's this idea that like, all these suburban white women, they're all pro-choice. Not true. Many of them are vocally pro-life. Right. And so the idea that this is just this monolithic issue, that it's the end all be all. Now, I know the Democrats have no choice but to run on that because they can't run on their record. And so they do that. And then they say, oh, it's the war for democracy. All those evil Republicans they accuse us of being what they are, authoritarians. And yeah, I think that what you're seeing is, even more important than abortion is children, to both men and women, to mothers and fathers. And you cannot ignore the damage that this administration and the Democrats have caused to children by locking down schools, by the indoctrination of children, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's backfiring. Just like, ironically, the very issues that they claim, when it comes to reproductive rights and children and stuff, women will vote Democrat. Well, it's backfiring on it. Just like with Hispanics, when it comes to immigration, Hispanics will vote Democrat. Well, no, because it turns out the great Hispanic people of this country that came here the right way, they don't want to see their communities overburdened by people coming the wrong way either. And so the whole Democratic messaging of like, you're a bigot if you don't agree with us, it's not working with these groups, because these groups, I'm not saying they're going to 100% vote Republican. I'm not dumb like them. I don't think that they're single issue. But I am saying that they see through that. A lot of people continue to be like, I don't want to be called a racist, so I'll just nod my head and agree when the media tells me something. A lot of these people don't care. They're like, I see what's happening in my community. So they might, when it comes to polling and stuff, they might say one thing. But when it comes to the ballot box, we'll see, I guess.
Right. Have you seen those clips of Joe Biden, and he's out there, he's saying GDP is up, real incomes are up, wages are up, gas prices are down, inflation is down, and the economy is growing. And it's just like one lie after. It's like, no, Joe Biden, actually real wages are down, inflation is up, gas prices are up. He's out. They're just lying about the economy, and it's like, what are they thinking? Do they not realize that the American people are literally, this is our lived truth or our lived experience, and they're trying to, to use a buzzword of the left here, but it's like, how do these Democrats think they can get away with like literally telling people that gas prices are down, and that that the economy is up and everything, like. How could they possibly? I guess the answer is probably that they know the media is going to carry their water for them, but I just don't see how that's a smart idea when people know that that's all false.
The socialist, sort of communist, authoritarian Democrat dream is further from reach than they believe. Right? They believe that if they control the messaging, that they control reality. That people will say 2 + 2 is 5. But the problem is they don't control it that much. That's why they're freaking out about Elon Musk. That's why they're creating a ministry of truth, right? Because their ideas are so terrible that they have to control the narrative. But the problem is, even with all of the decks stacked against conservatives and Republican and for the Biden administration Democrats, it can't make people ignore the reality when they go buy groceries, when they go fill their car up. It can't do that. It might in the future. The propaganda might be so successful in the future that they can do it, but it can't right now. And so as much as they want to gaslight you and say, the economy is doing great, it's fantastic, People know that's not true. And it's insulting to them. It's so stupid. Like, if the Democrats would hire someone like me or you, the first thing we would have told them is, like, that is the worst message ever. Like, you should say, absolutely, the economy's struggling. It's the Republicans' fault. But, it's Trump's fault. It's the Republic. But you have to acknowledge the reality that there are people suffering massive economic problems. And, again, we've talked about this a lot, but, when you hear the press applaud themselves, oh, we're the fourth estate, we hold truth to power, we're the last bastion up, to inform the people. They're right. That's why the press is important. A shame we don't have one, or we have people like me and you and, people coming from the ground level that are coming up, because our mainstream press are just propagandists. And what we see is, despite their efforts to sort of gaslight people and not fact check Biden's obvious lies, we actually see that people are able to see through it. And so the more they tighten their fists, the more the truth seeps through the cracks. And that's what you're having. So I think not only is it positive for this election, but I hope that there becomes a healthy distrust of these institutions, even more like the media, that people will stop being gaslit by them. Because, the message I'm going to tell is, hey, you know how the media is telling you, my Democratic friend, that the economy is doing great, and that's not true? And they'll be like, yeah. I'll be like, yeah, well, when they tell you that I'm a racist insurrectionist, you think they're honest about that? Of course not.
Right.
They lied to you about all of this stuff.
Totally. So, well, one of the ways that I've always thought is a good way to kind of get a barometer for where the election is to look at the Democrats and where they're spending their money, right? And where they're sending their big guns. And what I've seen in the last couple weeks is the Democrats sending their rock stars like Barack Obama, Kamala Harris to places like New York to try to save Kathy Hochul, to California to try to save House seats in California. And yet that we've seen polling where Republicans are within 1 point of a Senate seat in Washington State. We've seen Republican governors leading in polls in Oregon. We've seen Republicans leading in House races in Connecticut. Democrats defending deep blue territory. They're already sort of starting the blame game. And so I don't know if do you agree with that, or do you think I'm reading too much into the fact that Democrats they're having to go to places like New York? I mean, that's insane. The Democrats are having to send in the big guns to New York.
I mean, think what you will about Democrats, right? Think what you will about political parties, but one thing they do is they are reading tea leaves. They're not being honest with us, right? But they're trying their best to say, where are we vulnerable? Where, right? Like this, there's limited resources, limited, human capital, limited money. And so I think you're spot on. You could see by their reaction, right? Like, for example, what would the messaging be if I'm here in one of the most conservative districts in Pennsylvania? What would the messaging be if all of a sudden we saw all of this money flowing into Congressman Glenn G.T. Thompson that was just on the show with me here? All of a sudden, all this national RNC money is flowing to him. My goodness, the mainstream narrative would be, oh, Republicans are being devastated. This once one of the safest districts, right? And so they know the truth, that it's not boding well for them. Now, we'll see if they're able, through shenanigans, through hook or crook, we'll see what the results of the election end up being. But right now, you could tell they're incredibly worried. And they're already setting the narrative, by the way. That's another thing you could look at. Look at how they're talking, right? They're already setting the narrative. I'll bet, here's a little prediction I have for you, Lecture Chain. I bet magically, a couple days after Republicans are in office, if they win, all of a sudden we'll be in a recession. Magically, then it'll be a recession,
Totally.
Like, and you can see them setting that narrative, like, oh, things are going to get bad and blah, blah, blah. And so those sorts of things, where are they spending their human capital? Where are they spending their money? What is their messaging? To me, it all leads me to believe, despite what they're trying to say publicly, they know they're in a lot of trouble.
So I want to ask you kind of about an issue that kind of divides the right, which is whether we can sort of have faith in the integrity of these midterm elections. And I think that we don't have secure election laws, and I think there's reasonable reasons to doubt the security of our elections. I mean, when you have early voting, when you have mail-in ballots, when you have same-day voter registration, when you don't have strong voter ID laws, when you allow ballot harvesting, when you don't have, poll watchers there at all times, like there's all these problems that can lead to issues. But At the same time, elections are run at the county level. And so do I trust Philadelphia to run their elections and to have, completely pure elections in Philadelphia? No, I don't. But that doesn't mean that the Republicans won't be able to keep a close enough eye on them to prevent shenanigans. And I've heard, in a dangerous message that I disagree with on for some people on the right is that the elections are rigged, so it's not even worth it to vote. And I also want to encourage everybody that even if we think we're going to win, everybody has to get out and vote. Our country is on the line. We're fighting against Marxists, even if they're going to try to pull shenanigans. That's why we have to. That's why we have to watch them like a hawk. That's why we have to, pay attention. That's why we have to try to overwhelm them with the number of votes. So we've got to get out and vote. That's critically important. But if the Republicans do win, okay, do you think that is going to make a difference on the right in terms of people trusting election results? Do you think the election results will be valid if the Republican wins? And I mean, to me, I go back to like the Glenn Youngkin victory. It's like, okay, if the elections were always rigged, 100% of the time rigged, and the Democrats had, how did Glenn Youngkin win Virginia? And I've got some debate. I've got some bets with people on the right who don't trust elections at all. And I said, okay, and if the Republicans win the midterms, then I'm right that the entire system is not 100% corrupted. I don't know where you're at on that.
Well, so again, we have to be careful. I'm streaming on YouTube, so I have to be careful what I say. I'll say this in general. The stakes of elections are so high that if there is possibility to cheat, eventually it will happen, right? So even if you don't think it happened or you can't prove it happened in a specific election or in a specific year, it eventually could happen. So election security is absolutely an important issue. But you have to understand, even if you were going to try to cheat to rig an election, the way that it could be effective is because it was a close election in the first place. You're not going to be able to rig an election if the candidate A gets 20% of the vote and candidate B gets 80%. It would be impossible. The rigging would only be possible in the fringes, right? So 51% to 49 race, you might be able to rig it in that. So if you're someone that truly is worried about election security and thinks, well, maybe possibly it's all predetermined and they're just going to cheat and whatever, that's even more reason to get out and vote. Right? Because the argument would be, listen, then you overwhelm the system. That doesn't mean that then once your side wins that you don't look into what's going on and make corrections and make sure. But right now, you have to work within the system to be able to change it. Sitting at home does nothing. You're guaranteed 100% chance to lose if everyone says, well, it's rigged, so we're not going to participate. So the only chance you have is getting out and participating, even if you think that it's rigged. And the other thing is, like, I think that let's assume that shenanigans happen, and let's not talk about the United States in these because I don't want to get banned here, right? So let's just say hypothetically there was a country, right, where you thought that they cheated in a big national election. They can't go to that well every time. They can't, right? Because if they do, and every time you do it, the chances of you getting caught increase, and that's the end. If you get caught even once, the whole house of cards falls. So if there was, you would be less likely to see significant in a midterm than you would a presidential. If it was going to happen, you would expect it to be more in 2024 than 2022. I'm not saying that it can't happen in specific local levels or that it won't be happening as a theme nationally. I don't know, YouTube. I'm not making a comment on that either way. But what I am saying is, it's like the question of free will. You can wax philosophically on free will exists or not, but in order to live a life that matters, you have to operate as if it does. Same is true of this. We could talk about corruption and things like that, but the first step, 2 days away from the election right now, I'm not black-pilled. I don't want to hear the moaning and groaning, everything's cheating. Maybe afterwards we'll look at it and we'll say, okay, let's look at these things. But right now, my message is, if you think it's unfair, that's more impetus to get you and everyone you know that's registered to vote out to the polls.
Love it. Awesome. I agree with that 100%. So I saw some pieces about Donald Trump has been in the news lately. Donald Trump is doing 4 rallies, here as we go into the midterms. Obviously, Donald Trump had a huge impact on the primaries. I saw a mainstream media piece that basically was suggesting that Donald Trump is going to use these 2022 midterm victories to sort of catapult him into his 2024 White House bid. And I'm just kind of curious, what impact do you think Trump is having on the 2022 midterms? Do you think he can rightfully claim any credit if the Republicans are successful on Tuesday? Do you think he can actually use that to sort of jumpstart his White House bid, or do you think that he's not really having much of an impact on these midterms?
I think he is. I think, one, in the quality of people that won the primaries. Again, you've already said we didn't get everyone we wanted, but there are impressive people coming up that are sort of the new generations. Like Carrie Lake is one of the most politically impressive people. Not just that I agree with her positions, but stylistically, like
So
she
good.
is absolutely brilliant. Blake Masters, fantastic. Like, it's amazing you watched all of these debates when the Democrats weren't afraid and running from the debates. The Republicans are cleaning house. It's not even close. Like, even Lee Zeldin crushing it, right? And like
Totally,
the Democrat, their great hope, there was like, well, Herschel Walker will fall on his face. I watched that debate. I don't think Herschel Walker was perfect, but Warnock was terrible, right? And so you're seeing people that are coming up that are impressive. And I think that Trump, not just through direct endorsement, but by the nature of the issues he talked about and his stylistic approach of going on the offense, I think you see that that is still the wave of the future for the Republican Party. And I think also that Trump is pulling up candidates. So when Trump comes to, he's coming today to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. That's going to be a benefit. Again, take polling with a grain of salt, obviously, but Trump's more supported in my state than Biden. I know that. And so if this election becomes Trump versus Biden in these midterms, Trump wins. Republicans are going to win. And then there's also specific groups. Yes, there are people that will be turned off by Trump, but how many of those people were going to vote for these Republican candidates anyways, right? I don't envision, for example, a traditional, Catholic Republican that's like, I don't like Trump's foibles. I don't like his, boisterous mannerisms, his language, etc. So I wouldn't vote for him. But then saying, so I'm not going to vote for Mehmet Oz. I don't see that occurring.
Right.
But I do see a lot of people that are like, well, Oz seems like an establishment Republican. But so maybe I'm just going to sit home. But when Trump comes to Latrobe today and is on stage with Oz, they'll say, you know what? I support Trump. And if Trump tells me it's important to get out and vote for Oz Tuesday, then I will. So I think that he's lifting. I think that, and you see, I think some of the establishment Republicans are like, we wish Trump would sit this out. I disagree. I think that he's actually, I don't think it's the most important issue, but I think he's slightly increasing Republican chances nationally.
Totally. Okay. Question then on the flip side for the Democrats. You're kind of starting to see them kind of start to do the blame game a little bit already. If let's assume for a second that the Democrats get trounced in the midterms on Tuesday, and frankly, I guess I'd ask you the same question if the Democrats are somewhat successful on Tuesday. But do you think the Democrats will blame the midterm loss on Joe Biden and use it as an excuse to try to get Joe Biden out?
Absolutely.
Either of 24.
They're already laying.
Yeah.
They're already laying the groundwork. You could already see mainstream articles like, "Oh, he started to fumble his speech." Oh,
Right.
like these aren't like actual media criticisms, right? These are, I forget who they asked, would you support Biden? One of the prominent Democrats, and they were like, well, whoever runs. Like, that's damn near unprecedented for the incumbent president who still has eligibility,
Right.
for people in his party to be like, I can't speak to it. Like, they are laying the groundwork. Let's talk realistically. They're right to do so. Right? Joe Biden's terrible. He's terrible. Now, he's not running the show. Ron Klain's running the show as chief of staff, and the people around him, sort of Obama-connected people. But unlike Obama, and regardless of what you think of Obama, he was charismatic. He was someone that people could look at, and even if you didn't agree with his policies, he was an eloquent speaker when he was reading from the, not very good off the teleprompter, but when he was speaking from it, and he seemed like someone was likable. Joe Biden has all of the bad policy ideas with all of the bad record with none of the charm. None. And they realized that, just like with Fetterman here in Pennsylvania, they realized that the medical issues are catching up. And so, again, they're going to have to blame someone, and they're not going to want to blame it. They're in a tight spot. They've laid in bed with some of the most radical ideas of extreme leftism, right? It's going to be hard for them to come out and be like, okay, a lot of these insane left-wing positions we're now walking back. So they're going to point the finger, and it's going to go at Joe Biden.
So one of the most absolutely frustrating things that I've seen, and I've been talking. I go on the radio every Thursday morning, just for an hour, which is just me kind of like being a guest, not necessarily guest hosting the entire show, which I still do when he's gone. But I've been talking on the radio every sort of Thursday here for the last couple of weeks about how I'm really frustrated about how the Democrats are now running their campaigns as if they're conservatives. They're pretending to be conservatives. Now all of a sudden they are tough on crime. They support the police. They want to increase funding for the police. They want to lower taxes. They want energy development. They want gas prices to come down. It's one of those things where it's like, it's one of my favorite phrases. If the situation was hopeless, the propaganda would be unnecessary. But it kind of gives me hope. Like, if the Democrats honestly feel that in order for them to have a chance at winning, they have to come out and say, we're tough on crime. We want to secure the border. We want to lower taxes. We want to do all of this stuff. But at the same time, it's absolutely infuriating to hear these Democrats come out and say, I never supported defund the police. I never supported open borders. I never supported socialism. I believe in low tax. All of this crap. It's just insane. But it kind of like makes me happy to see that Democrats, have to pretend to be conservatives to have a chance at winning. But have you seen this sort of that same thing where all of a sudden the Democrats are pro law enforcement, tough on crime, all of these different issues where the Democrats are now like Republicans as we're getting close to election, all of a sudden the Democrats have turned their back on what you just mentioned, sort of these hard left progressive policies.
Yeah, I mean, we never supported defund the police. We never said lock down kids from school. That's a big one.
That's a huge one. Yeah, that's a huge one.
Never happened. Never happened.
Never happened.
Asked, what are you talking about, right? For me, I don't know if you saw the Dr. Oz Fetterman debate, which not just for political reasons, but just for like historical reasons, unbelievable. Someone in his medical condition, I'm not even going to make fun of him. I'm just going to say he should be at home rehabilitating. It's absolutely terrible. But his response to the fracking question, I went and watched left-wing streamers watching that debate live. I watched their stream, and you could see the cringe when he was like, I support fracking. I support fracking. And it's like, the Democrats are literally becoming Republicans on energy policy because they know that their policies are massively rejected by this country. Now, if you're out there and you're like, well, maybe you're thinking this. Maybe you're like, well, I'm for Roe v. Wade. And so I do think energy policy is important. I think having having energy development in this country is important. But if both Republicans and Democrats are for it, I'll vote Democrat for Roe v. Wade. They're lying to you. They don't believe in energy development. They're saying what they think the American people want to hear. And then when they're in power, they're going to continue to destroy the energy industry in this country. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. They know their positions aren't popular. Again, they rely on gaslighting and control of the narrative. And so they have to just lie about everything they believe in hopes of getting elected. And then once elected, they'll go back on what their lies were and go back to the radical leftist positions that no one likes.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to I listed like 4 or 5 policy issues, and then you come in with the biggest ones, the COVID lockdowns that they're trying to say they never supported. And, Gretchen Whitmer tried to say that, schools are only closed for 3 months in Michigan. It's like, no, Gretchen Whitmer, you're one of the most authoritarian lockdowners there. You guys had schools closed for years. And then you're right. All of a sudden, they support fracking after they want to ban fossil fuel. That's why I think it's so critically important, the work that you do, the work that I do, and that we get the truth out to people. And I think a lot of the American people are capable of figuring out themselves. But at the same time, I think it's a huge service for us to be on Twitch and on YouTube and on Twitter getting the truth out, because the gaslighting, the straight out lies, the disinformation being pushed by the Democrats and the Democrat operatives pretending and lying to be journalists. The fact that these people even call themselves journalists is a lie in and of itself. They're Democrat operatives. These are activists. But these Democrats can get away with all of a sudden with saying, that should have been the biggest news story ever. That Fetterman lies, saying he's always supported fracking. Like, that was just a out and out lie, a pure just disinformation. And the media probably never called him out. I certainly never saw any media articles calling him out for that.
No, you were a bigot if you noticed he had health problems. That was the media takeaway.
Right.
Like, bigot. How dare you? Like I said, next time they'll just nominate someone who's comatose and then say that you're ableist for saying, well, don't they have to be conscious to do that? How dare you, bigot? Like, that'll be their ideal candidate going forward. Yeah, and what's interesting is John Fetterman actually is the quintessential Democratic candidate because they've just cut off all the frills. They at least had the dignity to lie to you convincingly in the past. Now it's just like, here's your statement saying, I want to end fracking. How do you square that with your statement today that you've always supported fracking? And his
Right.
response is, I support fracking. They're not even trying to lie to you. Like, I mean, they're lying, but
Right.
they're not even trying to dress it up anymore. It's just like, don't believe your lying eyes. That's the message that they have. And real quick, talking about these reversal of positions right around election time, let's not forget the recall election of Gavin Newsom. Oh man, lockdowns and COVID, it's very important. And you want grandma to die if you don't agree. But right around the time of the recall in California, all of a sudden Gavin Newsom started opening up California. Isn't that interesting how the science changed right around the time of the election? So it's like, see, if you vote for me, you won't be locked down. Of course, once you win the election, then it's going back to the way things have always been. So yeah, this is tradition for the Democrats. Push these radical left-wing policies that the majority of people hate, and then come election time, go, oh, okay, we never push those. We're just normal, your grandparents, Democratic Party. We just believe in unions and we believe, in this and that and the other. And then then you get the Biden administration, you get record illegal immigrants, you get record crime, you get record inflation, and then 2 years from now in 2024, they'll say, no, we didn't do any of that. We didn't do those policies. It's the same game, wash and repeat every single time.
So I want to ask you about some specific races, and the one I'm kind of wondering about is Pennsylvania. And I know you've got some particular insight into this, but it doesn't make sense to me that you would have hundreds of thousands of people that would go vote for Oz and then vote for Shapiro, the Democrat, for governor. But that's what the polls are saying. The polls are saying that Mastriano's down by 10 to 15 points, but Oz is up by maybe one, real close. But so is that possible? Like, is it possible that there's hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvanians that are going to split their vote and, go vote for Oz, but then go vote for the Democrat for governor? That makes zero sense to me, but I don't know. I mean, do you think that's actually possible?
Yes, and I'll tell you why, right? It doesn't make sense. Anyone out there that's like, I would love to talk to that person, but it has to do with propaganda. So, for example, Karl Rove's super PAC is actually pushing for Dr. Oz in Senate and pushing for Josh Shapiro. That's Republican Karl Rove is pushing for Josh Shapiro. And Josh Shapiro's campaign is sort of running from Fetterman. If you look at their local ads around here, it's like police unions support Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro, the moderate Democrat, right? That's how they're trying to spin it. And for those that don't know, Josh Shapiro is someone you'll see run for president in the future, particularly if he would happen to win this governor race. He's someone with presidential aspirations. So there are a lot of conservatives that don't like Mastriano. No, not conservatives.
Like actual conservatives?
Well, that's not the right word to use. There are a lot of Republicans. Let me use that word. And here's why. I've been fighting with people both on screen, but far more off screen, that are sort of in the establishment Republican Party in Pennsylvania. And they don't like Mastriano because they are concerned about maintaining their position of power and influence. And Mastriano is perceived as an outsider, similar to what Trump was. And so they would rather have a Josh Shapiro type person that they think, well, we could mold if we help him mold to not be that radical and still keep our position of power and then run against them in 2024 or 2026, than see someone who is a Republican that would usurp their position of power. And I'm telling you, it's getting into the weeds here, but I'll tell you right now, I've talked to people that are like, well, this county's Republicans are mad because Mastriano didn't attend their dinner. And he didn't answer the phone. He never reached out to them during the primary. And which I've been telling is, the problem isn't Mastriano. The problem is you. I've had to pinch my nose and vote for Republican candidates I've hated over and over again in the past. And what I've been told by the Republicans were, well, your guy lost. Ron Paul lost. Now it's time to get out there and do the right thing. And I've always suspected that if the shoe was on the other foot and their guy lost, that they would be crybabies about it and say, well, we don't like that. We're going to take our ball and go home then. And I've been pushing back against this. So to answer your question, sadly, yeah, there is a possibility that there are a lot of these like old school Republican, we're concerned about maintaining power in our little, instead of saying what's best for the state, what's best for the people, we're concerned about our position. And like I said, you need to look no further than Karl Rove. They're painting Mastriano as an extremist. So you can see an average voter going, I like Mastriano's policies, but I think he's a dangerous insurrectionist. It's all garbage. And I think I'm more hopeful than the polls are suggesting. I think that Mastriano has a real shot. You've seen those polls closing, and just looking locally around here with the support, I think people are seeing through it. But there is a chance that Oz wins and Mastriano loses, and it'd be a shame because as a Pennsylvanian, I think that governor race might be more important. If you see what DeSantis has done in Florida and how important it is to have a strong governor and how that can have national ripple effects, I think Mastriano has the potential to be that sort of guy. And conceivably, the Senate race we could lose in Pennsylvania and still win the Senate overall. But as a Pennsylvanian, if I lose that governorship and it goes to radical Josh Shapiro, I got to deal with that for 4 years. So
Right.
I'm encouraging people. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this show. I'm encouraging people to get out there. And even if you have questions about Mastriano, Josh Shapiro is just an extension of Joe Biden and Tom Wolf. He's going to lock you down. Crime's going to surge. Inflation's going to surge. That's what he is. He is part and parcel to them. And so you should reject that in the strongest possible terms.
So, do you see any other you see some other places where you kind of might see something like that happen? Like in Arizona, people are saying Kerry Lake could win, but Blake Masters could lose. To me, I just have such a hard time wrapping my head around this. And frankly, most people I've talked to that are voting Republican have said, and I've seen this a lot, people saying for the first time in my life, I voted straight ticket Republican, Republicans up and down the ballot, every single, and that those are people that are basically have made the realization about that this Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party that we grew up with. This is not the old Democrat Party, and we have to, and we could go down the whole list of policy ideas about how their policies are just destroying our country and ruining our lives and making us poorer. That's the bottom line: is these Democrat policies are making us poor. Period. That's what it's doing to us, and people don't want that. And so, but I don't know. Do you see Kerry Lake winning and Blake Masters losing, or do you see maybe more of a sweep there?
I think that's more. I'm not giving up hope on Mastriano, right? I think that it's more likely though that Lake and Masters wins than it's likely that Oz and Mastriano win here. I think that they both. Lake's easily going to win. I think that Masters will win that race as well. I'm very hopeful. I like Blake Masters a lot. But I think that there's similar things that they're trying to paint. Blake is sort of more of extreme. There wasn't a lot of Republican money going into that race to sort of push back. One thing I should mention is actually I buried the lead because more importantly than those people, more importantly than Mastriano and Masters, and that sort of those people are who they are running against. And a lot of these states, like Georgia's another state, right? Where it's like conceivably you could have a senator in one hand, but the governor in the other party. Well, what do they all have in common? Well, look at who Dr. Oz is running against. A stroke victim. Not good, right? Incredibly weak. Regardless of what you think of Shapiro, he's better than Fetterman as a candidate, right? When you see who's Kerry Lake running against? Katie Hobbs. Horrible. She is one of the
so bad.
I couldn't believe when you hear her talk, you're like, oh my goodness.
She has no charisma, zero charisma. I was shocked.
Then you look at, okay, you got Herschel Walker versus Warnock. Who's Kemp running against? Stacey Abrams. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. So a lot of these races, I think that the weakness of these particular Democratic candidates, that even people that might be like, look, I would vote Democrat, but my goodness, these people are so bad. But again, it doesn't make sense. I think that one mistake, I don't want to say mistake, but I think that there could have been a better focus nationally on making each and every one of these races about, this is Joe Biden. The person I'm running against is an extension of Joe Biden, and running together, right? Where the governor and the senator are running together saying, we are running against these people who are the extension of Joe Biden at the state level, at the national level. And so it makes no sense to vote for Joe Biden for governor, but vote against Joe Biden for Senate. And I think that there could have been a better message on that. There are shenanigans with some Republicans like Karl Rove and his pack, and where money's being going in other places. But I implore people, understand the importance, not just, again, if you have any questions about the importance of state level races, look at what's happening in Florida. And I implore you, understand that even if you think someone seems like a decent person or they're charismatic and they're a Democrat, they are going to be beholden to the radical Democrat agenda that is antithetical to everything that makes America great.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about the Georgia Senate race, because I was genuinely concerned about our chances in that Georgia Senate race when all of these smear stories came out about Herschel Walker. And I don't know, I've heard some people say, oh, we already knew this about Herschel Walker. Everybody's got some skeletons in their closet, and but then Herschel Walker sort of denies. I was really worried about that, but then you're seeing Herschel Walker winning in the polls, and so I haven't looked closely enough at that race to know the answer, but my assumption to this is that there's a lot of money, a lot of conservative money in that race, mostly being used to inform the Georgia people about how extreme Warnock is. I mean, I've known from the very beginning, Raphael Warnock is an extremist. He praised Jeremiah Wright. He called Jeremiah Wright a prophet, and refused to condemn Jeremiah Wright and some of the grotesque things he said, and literally called him a prophet. He's one of these sort of hard left anti-American, anti just all sorts of things. So I've always assumed that, and I don't know, do you agree with that? The reason Herschel, at the same time, I saw a Herschel Walker speech where I was blown away. I was like, holy cow, Herschel Walker's the real deal. This guy's got it. No notes, gave a 20-minute speech, no notes, just, and did a fantastic job. And so, but again, those news stories that came out about, Herschel Walker and then Herschel Walker's own kid, calling him out and sending out these tweets attacking Herschel Walker as a father. I mean, that stuff was bad, but then he's winning in the race, and I'm assuming, I just have to believe that that's because Raphael Warnock has been successfully, people have been successfully informed that he is an extremist and he's a radical. And so people are saying, look, Herschel Walker, he may have made some mistakes in the past, but at least he's not like essentially a communist like, Warnock is. I don't know. Do you have any different opinion on that, or?
Not really. I'd add to it a little. I think it's obvious Georgia's a conservative state, right? So when you're talking about, well, I'm going to vote against conservative values for a radical left-winger, right, because of personal character issues, those character issues have to be overwhelming and substantial and undisputed. And the problem is, if that's the sort of race you're going to run and try to win, you better not have character issues yourself. Well, we can hardly say that about Ralph Warnock, right? So for any abuse allegations you take seriously of Herschel Walker, we have on video Ralph Warnock's ex-wife saying that he's attacked her, ran over her with a car. And it's, to listen to the Democrats meander about of hashtag believe all women, except the women that accuse Democrats, all character issues, the abortion issue, whether or not that Herschel Walker paid for an abortion. That's terrible if he did. But if that's my big issue, why am I going to vote for someone who's going to legalize abortions up to birth and force my tax dollars to pay for it? So even if I disagree with the character issues of Herschel Walker, that's not going to cause me to pull the trigger. Because it's a conservative state, I think that character issues, because Warnock has character issues as well, I think that you're seeing that the issues are winning out over the personal characteristics. The other thing I'll say is you're right about the money being spent, but it also goes the other way. So I need to look into this more, but my understanding is the Zuckerbucks that were so influential in the 2020 election, I believe that the state legislators in Georgia passed laws that those sorts of monies weren't allowed to come in. So not only do you see legitimate dollars being spent in a fair contest between Warnock and Walker, not only do you see a lot of legitimate dollars going Walker's way, which is helping him, but you're seeing a lot of those illegitimate dollars that were coming from places like Zuckerberg aren't there. And the truth is, without the propaganda to craft the message, when you're just looking at the issues, the Democrats don't have a leg to stand on in a place like Georgia.
So one of the things that I think Joe Biden and the Democrats were counting on was, number one, the Roe v. Wade issue, and then sort of a big second, and is Joe Biden's student loan plans and executive orders. And Democrats have always had to rely on the young vote. And frankly, I've seen the mainstream media, Chuck Todd and NBC News, these types kind of warning, issuing a warning to the Democrats about young voter turnout. And they've said, Chuck Todd literally said on NBC News the other day that the Democrats have to have near record-breaking young voter turnout to even have a chance here. They need the 18 to 25 or 18 to 35 demographic to have massive turnout. And Joe Biden, I think, you tell me if you disagree, but I think he originally extended the student loan payment pause to end in August, and then timed his student loan forgiveness plan for around that same time, August, September, right before the election, to try to drive young voter turnout. Do you agree with that? And then do you think that Biden's student loan bailout, whatever you want to call it, is going to be successful in sort of driving young voter turnout in the midterm sufficient to kind of help some Democrats get across the finish line?
No, I don't think, to answer the latter part, I don't think it'll be sufficient to drive out. It might increase numbers slightly, but I don't think it's going to have the impact they want. Look, the reality is, we could talk about all sorts of issues and things like that, but there is sort of a voter apathy for young people that's hard to overcome. So even if you're promising them free college, you're promising them, monies. Here's another good one, right? Like, what about Biden's historic decriminalization of marijuana that was going to let people out of federal prison that were there for possession charges? Oh, wait, that's exactly 0 people. Ha! But that's something that's designed to appeal to young people, that maybe partake in that sort of thing. And it's purely just, it's just virtue signaling. That's all it is. We see these bribery schemes, for example, going into the 2020 election. Remember, Biden was you had to vote for Warnock if you wanted that $1,500 check. Remember, you want that check, right? You want $1,500? Vote Warnock, vote Biden. Of course, they fell through on that promise, but to me, it's tantamount to bribery. That's all it is, trying to buy votes. And that's what they're trying to do. I absolutely agree that this was a political stunt, that's what was designed to happen. It's shrewd. As a strategy, I don't think that it's a bad plan if you're Democrats. I'm like, you throw it out there. You need some sort of Hail Mary because there's nothing you could run on. And I do think Republicans need to do a better job of reaching out to young people. By the way, Republicans, hire me. I can do that for you. For example, we're going to be talking to primetime Alex Stein later tonight. Comedy, the fact that we are people that can have fun and enjoy our lives and we're happy people. Just look at our sphere of the online, politics people. Look how miserable so many of these left-wing people are. We're great. We have family lives. We have, jobs that we enjoy. We're happy people. We're not trying to bury you because you told a joke we found offensive in your yearbook 30 years ago. So there are ways to reach out. But that's the Democrat strategy. It's always, as you get older, you get wiser and you realize these promises, all this free stuff you're getting, nothing is free. And unfortunately, young people, if you're considering going out there and voting Democrat because of this stuff, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, they're never going to pay that national debt. It's going to be you. It's going to be you when you decide to have children. You and your children are the ones that are going to suffer in quality of life because all of these faux promises that were made by a bunch of politicians that don't care that they're harming the country in the future.
Well, frankly, we're all paying. The lowest income earners right now are paying for the national debt through 9% inflation. Every time you go to the grocery store or to the gas station, we're paying for the national debt that way.
Yep, totally agree. And again, I won't mention anyone by name, but I talked to people well respected in the field of economics that assured me that actually inflation, because the rise in minimum wage and things like that have increased, that wages for the poor mean that inflation's harming sort of this wealthy middle class more. That's not true. And you could talk to the experts, and I understand that they could cite, the papers they want. All you got to do is go talk to someone that's making $15 an hour. Ask them how things are going this year. Because I'll tell you this much, my grocery bills have doubled. Like my gas bills have more than doubled. And so, this idea, it goes back into them framing the narrative. And when it comes to numbers and things like that, economics, you could have went in the Great Depression and been like, but if we take these specific numbers in these past 2 months, the economy looks like it's rolling now. But the people that were struggling to feed their families knew that was garbage. And that's the truth. And sadly, like all of these socialist policies, they sell you the belief, they sell you the promise. It's for the poor and working class. And who pays the worst for it? It's the poor, it's the working class. The Democrat positions of lockdowns and massive money printing and giveaways of that have resulted in one of the largest transfers of wealth from the poor and working class to the rich that we've seen in this country's history. It is not debatable. It is factual. And their response is never, oops, our bad. It's always, let's double down, give us more power, leave us print more money, leave us be more authoritarian.
One of the things I really am looking forward to on election day is when Kari Lake wins, and then the official Democrat Party strategy of helping Kari Lake during the primary because they thought that she would be easier to beat because she's an election denier, and this happened all across the country in numerous races, and now these ultra MAGA Republicans, which by the way, I got a tweet that is going viral. It's got over 3,000 likes right now where I tweeted out that said, I wasn't even a Trump supporter in 2016. I supported Ted Cruz. I'm not even a Trump supporter in 2016. The Democrats have turned me into one of these ultra MAGA. I'm now like an ultra mega MAGA Republican. I love the Joe Biden mega MAGA Republican. It's like mega MAGA Republican. It's like,
Thank you.
yeah, it's like, I love it. So it's like, but it's just funny that the Democrats tried that strategy and it's backfiring, and the Democrats have turned, people that were not even Trump supporters in 2016 into mega MAGA Republicans. Like, how are the Democrats this freaking dumb?
It's unbelievable. Right? And again, you want to know? I'll tell you why. Like, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. The reason is because they have controlled the levers of power for so long and been able to shape the narrative that they get no pushback. Like, you can see, why is Joe Biden always so hostile when the media asks him a difficult question? Because their belief is, how dare you? Your job's not to ask me questions.
Right.
Your job's to carry water for me. And so when you go through, like I always use the example of when Ben Affleck was on Real Time, right? And Sam Harris, who I despise Sam Harris, but nonetheless, when he's on there talking in a competent way about Islamic extremism, and Ben Affleck's like, you're terrible, you're racist. He has nothing to say. It's just all emotion, and he sounds like the dumbest guy in the world. Well, how did that happen? Because no one ever told Ben Affleck no. Everyone's like, you're the best, you're the smartest, you're the greatest dude ever. And then when you run into a real world situation, you look like a fool. And that's what's going on. Like, how are they so stupid? For me, one of the biggest political, I guess you'd call it, gaffes that I've ever seen was that photo Stacey Abrams took, not wearing a mask while all those kids had masks on. And to me, it was like, I understand the Democrat position that they have contempt for children. Get that. I totally So I'm not surprised she's like, make the plebes wear masks. I get that. What I'm surprised is no one in her campaign was like, hey, we're taking a picture, put a mask on real quick. But they don't even know. It doesn't even cross their mind because to them, it's just like, well, everyone carries water for us.
Right.
You're a bigot if you reject us. And so that's the message. All you got to do is go racist, bigot, homophobe. That's all you got to do if you're them. You're an insurrectionist. It doesn't matter if the facts are on your side. And so what you see, by the way, have you noticed how many of them are skipping debates? Because they know this. They're not sharpened through people disagreeing with them all their lives like me and you, and like Blake Masters, and like Kari Lake. Instead, they've been in this bubble, and they have to stay in the bubble or they're exposed.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. Shoot, I just had one other comment that I was going to say. I'm drawing a blank on it now. Anyway, we've been going for an hour now, which is how long we've kept our conversations. I don't know if you had another person lined up or if you wanted to call it right there.
We could call it. I have someone coming up in like 40 minutes or so. But before we go, I think it would be, seeing as how what we've done, we should give final predictions, right?
I agree. Yeah. No, let's do it. So I did sort of my final Senate prediction a couple of weeks ago and said 52. I thought and I did a real clear poll, or I did a map and actually clicked through the map and stuff like that. And I predicted 52 for the GOP in the Senate, and I guess I'll stick with that at 52, but I'm feeling even more hopeful that we pick up 53 or 54. I mean, I was blown away by Don Bolduc in New Hampshire. Couldn't believe how good he was in the debate that I saw, or I don't know if it was a debate or just a sort of town hall or forum type thing, but I'm blown away by him. Tiffany Smiley was blown away by her. If the Republicans, pick up some of those types of races, then it's even it'd be more than 52. But I'm at 52. Where are you at?
I would put 52 or 53. I'll say 52 to be conservative, and then I could be excited if we get to 53. There's a chance we pick up more than that. It honestly is. I could see conceivably 54. So I'm going to say 52, barring any water main breaks in Atlanta or things like. We don't know. We don't know how the water mains are around the country here. We might have to, have a brief stop on the counting. But no, I would say 52. Look, I'm willing to be wrong. But that's my prediction. I'm going to stick with it. I think in the House, I think you're looking at 245, possibly 250, but I'll say 245 again conservatively on that. I'm very hopeful. I've been very measured in my responses in the past. When Trump won, it was the most exciting political day of my life. I did not rub it in my friend's face. I did not gloat. I will be gloating this time. I will be rubbing it in their face. I will celebrate, and then I'll get to work the next day after I spend some time with my family, holding the Republicans' feet to the fire. But it is something to celebrate because the tyranny that the Democratic Party represents on every level, it must be rejected. And this, I'm happy to. I'm not blackpilled like so many people. It's not. It's going to take years, and it will take decades. We will be fighting this battle when we're old men, which I'm already almost old. But right. It's a good start, and I think you're seeing some of the right types of Republicans win. Too.
Amen. I'll go 250. I'll go 250 in the House.
Yeah.
And frankly, look, in the governors, I think we're looking at over 30, 31, 32 Republican governors. I think Republicans do extremely well in the state legislatures. I mean, in Montana, I mean, this is staggering, but for example, in Montana, the Republicans already hold all 5 statewide offices. There's five statewide offices, governor, secretary of state, attorney general, et cetera. All of them are controlled by Republicans, and then Republicans had a majority in our state house. The Republicans in Montana are looking at having a super majority in the state legislature, which means that they can do constitutional referendums. And frankly, I'm predicting the Republicans do well. It just from up and down the ballot, governors races, state house, state senate. Which is critically important. I mean, I think you made a really good point about the weakness of the Democrat candidates. I think one of the reasons you sort of see the Democrats still having very weak is because the Democrat bench was devastated under the Obama administration. Over the course of the Obama administration, the Democrats lost over 800 seats. From president down to dog catcher, they lost over 800 seats. Their bench was devastated. They don't have a strong bench. Whereas the Republicans, man, we've just got so many good candidates, and we've got such a deep bench.
Absolutely agree. And I think, listen, to me, this is the way I've been thinking it in my head. Winning the Senate, winning the House, it's to stop the bleeding. Winning the state, those levels, that's to start doing the right thing, right? The state and local are arguably more important, right? We have to stop the bleeding at the federal level. Like when they're going to lock you up because you're pro-life or lock you up because you're a peaceful protester, you have to stop that. But I don't know that there will be real change with Biden at the top level. I think they should hold accountable corruption in the FBI, places like that, corruption with the DHS censoring people on social media. But the real change will occur in states like Montana when there's a Republican supermajority, where all of a sudden the debates between traditional conservatives and conservatives like me that are like, no. We're going on the offense. That's where you'll see the offense. That's what you see with DeSantis. So keep an eye on those state races. It's arguably just as important, if not more important. And I'm excited down ballot just like you are. So
awesome. Well, I'm honored to be a part of your 24-hour stream. Super excited to be a part of it. I think it's a great thing you're doing. I wish you all the success. I'll support you. I'll retweet any announcement tweets. I'll raid you when I'm done streaming here myself. And super honored to be your friend and honored to have done the midterm election state of the 2022 campaign with you. I'm glad that we've got now 5 or 6 shows that we've done over the course of 10 months leading up to the campaign. I think it'll be kind of cool thing to have historically, and fully support you and everything you're doing, Rob.
Thank you. And I feel the same with you. It's nice to know that there's one of the things that's great to do this is you kind of sometimes feel like you're in a bubble. And when you see that there's like-minded, intelligent, great people out there that share your beliefs, it's really inspiring and it encourages you to go forward. So now I've loved doing these shows. It will be so fun to look back after the election and see how right and wrong we were going through the time. I can't wait to look at that. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. So thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for coming on my show today. So
thanks so much. Best of luck.
All right, we'll see you.
See ya.